Yeah, hello, all of you. Welcome to the DMX512 seminar webinar. We are going to introduce this for our motors today. I'm Peter Nelson. I'm mainly taking care of support and sales worldwide. And my colleague is sitting next to me. He can
Hello.
introduce himself.
I'm Alexander, also technical support and sales. Peter's protege, you could say.
Yes, and I want to show you something, how we can use these products today. DMX was something we made for the small Mac motors in the beginning. And later on, we made for the bigger Mac motors, where we also have the motors with absolute encoders. And now lately, we have also made it for the MIS motors, the stepper motors with integrated controller inside. And here we are going to tell a little about where we use it, DMX for theaters, for example, how we can set up the Mac and MIS motors, something about the controller we are using, but it could have many phases, of course, how to program, and how does it work later on in this. Normally you have some kind of controller. It could be a very big one like this one, but we are just using a software for a PC tool for our laptops. Very easy to install, free for testing, and then we can set it up there. And as I told you in the beginning, we have the small Mac motors, the servo motors. These motors was only with incremental encoders in the beginning. Now we are making some new generation with also absolute encoders. So they're looking more at the bigger motors we have here, Mac 400, Mac 800, 1500, 3000, 45,000. So there are a lot of different sizes for the Mac motors. These motors have absolute encoders or incremental, depending on which one you choose. Then we have all the MIS motors from MIS 17 up to MIS 43. Also, all of them can be used with DMX. Sometimes it's easy to use them in data chain. Otherwise, you have to look for a connection from one COM port to each of the motors. And the purposes, yes, in the beginning it was mainly light, controlling the light system on theaters, but lately we have also heard about fire brigades using them for controlling the water, which should be controlling where the water is hitting the buildings or boats or whatever it is. So it can be used in many different applications. The thing about DMX is it's a one-way connection, so you never get any results from the motors to tell where it is. So you have to remember, of course, when installing this kind of system. But as you can see here, it's a controller. Then you have some cable for some slaves connecting to this. And in the end, you normally need to make a termination of the line. In the beginning, we are using IS-485 communication, but it could also be a communication using IS-422. Simple one-way control for controlling the motor, positioning the motor, velocity, and acceleration. And these are the options we have today. What we do in these programs, we set up a value between 0 and 255. And this is scaling you make for the motor. And there is something in the motor that's making these convert to the right precisions or velocity values. So if we look in the program MacTalk, which is a common commissioning tool we are using, you can see here is a tab called Mac00FSX, which is a module made for DMX, among other things. Could also be a fast IS-485 channel. But we can go to the setup and make it do what it should do. But you can see here we're using IS-232 as communication for setting up the motor. If we look at the MIS motors are always using IS-485 as a channel for setting up the motor. It could also be using the IS-422. But how you're using it is depending on it's with or without Ethernet. If we look at the Mac motors for a start, you get this setup screen. And you can see there's something about rate, addresses, group ID, and so on. And the communication rate can go from 9600 to 23400, which is the maximum speed we can use. We have some addresses we can set up for the different motors if needed. And we also have a group ID. And especially for the bigger Mac motors with absolute encoders, we needed to make a fix so we can make them not making the zero search or homing when they start up. And for that purpose, we use the group ID 250. Then it's not using the absolute encoder anymore for starting up. It's already at the right position when you power up the motor. Otherwise, you can just go directly into position mode and make the motor move. Of course, you have to select the DMX mode to be able to see all this. It could be there are some errors in the motor for some reason, and it's possible to clear this automatically, and this can be done with activating this one. You can also make a compact communication package for the motor, so each time you send a new position, it also looks at velocity and acceleration and send all these information directly to the motor. And sometimes you only want to change the acceleration of the motor when it's standing still. This you can do by marking this, this area. And last, we have swap outputs, because we have two outputs from the motor, one telling that you're in position and the other one telling you have an error in the motor. These can be swapped directly in the module here, so you see it directly opposite. Now we come to set up the DMX communication and the module here. And you can see we have two start addresses, 1 and 2. And you can see here address number 1, that has something to do with positioning, very rough positioning. And then you have the fine positioning with number 2. And 3, that's the control channel. And then that's because now we are using 1. That means we have address number 1, 2, and 3. Next address, number 2, starts at 4. So acceleration would be 4 and the maximum velocity would be 5. This we set up in the controller later on. Then we have the positioning. And as you can see here, we can scale what's coming out. I told you before, we have a value coming in from 0 to 255. So if we put in 100, the motor is running 100 multiplied by 255 as a maximum. Well, you can also use the denominator if you want to scale it down in some way. As you can see here on the acceleration, that was an example from a customer used lately. He had set it up with 1 and 100 here. That means it multiplied by 100, divide by 100. And if you have 255, it's fine, then you get 2. But if you have almost 0, you get 0. And if you don't have an acceleration, the motor is not moving at all. So you have to put in some offset to be able to move. And then you can make the scaling afterwards on this. So you have the option for this. Then we have the velocity setting. The same here, you can say, okay, I want to run 2,550. And that means 255 multiplied by 10, that's what you get. And the last thing is if you need some homing using DMX, then you can select it down here. You can only set up if it should be torque homing, mechanical homing, or it should be sensor type in the motors we use. All the rest of the parameters should be set up in MacTalk in the homing tab. And if you go to the homing tab, zero search, and now it's made in this way, we have this homing tab, and you can select here mechanical end stop, or it could be sensors. And you define if it should go in positive direction or reverse direction. And then you can set up the velocity and maybe also the torque for the homing, so you can see when it stops, and some offset as well. And when you set up all this and you have set up the DMX information, then you press save in motor, and then the motor is ready for running. Important will be that the DMX is running on RS485. And when setting up the max motors, we are using RS232. So what you have to do is remove the line from the Mac motor. It's not enough removing it in the other end. It should be removed from the Mac motor. And then you connect your RS485 cable for the motor, so you're ready to run through the controller. And then you power up the motor again, and it'll be ready for running DMX protocol instead. And the same way, if you want to change anything in MacTalk in the motor, then you disconnect RS485, connect RS232, and then repower the motor. Then it'll start up in MacTalk protocol again, and you can connect in that way. If we look in the for the MIS motors, now we have the DMX512 set up tab instead. And here you can see we have two options. If you press here, you can select either it should be RS422. DMX is disabled at the moment, but you can enable here. And you can use the RS485 for the DMX control. And again, you have auto clear errors. You can send the acceleration over and stand still, and you can skip the homing. And again, we have the setup here for the motor. Here you can see I've chosen some different addresses because the plan was I should connect two motors. I had some problems doing that at the moment, so that's not done. We only connect one motor. But if you have two motors, it should have a different address. So 21 could be one, and the second one could be 24. And then the rest is the same.
We might want to add that the issues we had with the setting up two motors was with our DMX controller, which is a bit old.
What do you mean? It's only 1991, so it's not that old. But I know this is quite old, and it was working fine on my stationary PC. And I also had used a newer version of the Q-Lite on the laptop lately, and that was working fine, also with more motors. But for information for you, it's okay tool, this one. But this is something you can use for free. You can download it directly, the Q-Lite controller, and then exist in different versions at the moment. If you go to this tool, Q-Lite controller, I've put it up. So we have some control information on the first slider here, and then we have something about position on the next one, and velocity and acceleration. And this is something you set up. You can implement these icons directly in the tool, or you can get some of those from us, so we can start up at this demo program, and we can help you get started with this if needed. But there are some functions. You can save files, of course. We have here on the top, you can save different files. Then you have the Mac Manager here, where you can put up the fixture like this. Bus communication, in and outputs. And outputs, that's the one where we set up the communication to the RS485. I'll show you a little later. And then we can put it in operation mode. You can also see here we have a start, stop button, and you have some monitor possibilities in here. But otherwise, it's made the firmware in the motor like this. So if you key in something like 0 to 9, it goes into passive mode. 60 to 69, it's position mode. 180 to 189, you have start up of the homing. And you can clear errors using 200 to 209. So we just move the slider to the right position, and it'll start doing what you requested. And later on, when we put it in position mode, you can just pull up and down the slider again, and the motor will move between the positions you had chosen here. Different velocity and different acceleration. Here you can also see how it's set up. As I explained to you, we have the addresses. 1 and 2 was position. This is the rough positioning we are doing. Here we have a more fine positioning. These are two different sliders we're using. Then we have address 3. We have this control information, what to do, go position mode, zero search, and all that. And acceleration, address number 4, and 5 is for velocity. And if you have chosen to have more motors, it could be that you make a new line here, just press plus, and then you make a new one called position Y. And then it should maybe be address number 21 and 22 for this one, and so on. So this is quite easy to set up. You can also monitor the different channels here, what value they have got in this way, if you want. Just looking into the settings here, outputs for communication is important to remember. Here you can see, if I open this output, it'll come up and I can choose between different options for USB outputs from the PC in this case. And here we have selected high-speed USB IS485 converter, the one you have already seen, I guess, at some point. And here you'll then be able to see if it's communication correct or not. And if this is done, you just press OK, and the motor will be ready for running. When you have pressed OK, you'll see this screen. You have selected which one to use. And here we have it again, the setup, as we saw it before. Yes, you have a lot of questions again, but before we get to the questions, I'll just show you how it's working in the real life. And you can see here, we have the real controller set up here. You can see the control of the x-axis, you can see the position control, you can see velocity and acceleration. And the motor we are looking at is a MIS motor at the moment. So right now it's 62, that means we are in position mode. And I can pull up the slider here, and you can see now it's moving. And depending on the resolution I made in MacTalk, it'll turn maybe 1 revolution on the motor, or it could be 10 or 100, whatever you need. And you can also see if I move this one, it's moving a little bit, but not very much. So that's for fine-tuning of the positioning. And we can also decrease the velocity if you want to do that. Now it's running very slow. And I can make it run faster. I can change that during the running. And also the acceleration I can change. I need some speed here also. Accelerating very slow and decelerating again. Or we can make it run much faster. So these are the options for those motors. And that's the same for MIS motors or for Mac motors. It's all the same. So it is an easy tool and an easy product to use if you have that kind of applications.
Peter?
Yes?
Can you show and tell how to put the motor into velocity mode?
Velocity mode. I can maybe show you 2 seconds. Just have to find the right one. You can see here, we have the jump velocity. This is already defined in here. So there's some default and you have a jump velocity. And this one, as far as I remember, I have not used that very much because it's normally controlled by these parameters from the sliders in the controller. But there are some inputs that can activate these jump velocity functions. So it can run forward and backwards or stop the motor. If there are more questions about this, let me know, and we can find it for you, and we can send it to you, these informations also.
Yeah, I might want to add, for those of you who didn't already notice it, there's a question tab in the bottom of the screen. So if there's anything, you can write questions in there. If there's something that comes to your mind later, please write support@jvl.dk and we can help you.
I can tell we have had some applications during the years, and there are also some requests sometimes for extra features, but it's not something we have been into, except we have added the absolute encoder functionality, so we can skip the homing for the Mac motors, for the bigger Mac motors. But if you have any request for special functionality, let us know, and we can maybe see if it's something we can do. Do we have some more questions for this?
Yes, there's something here. Just a moment. On the MIS motor, can you use DMX parallel while running the mag torque control to the motor?
That would not be possible because it's using the same channel.
Also for the MIS motor?
Also for the MIS motor, yes.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure. That's not something I tested because normally I would say it's using the same channel, but as you can see also on this screen, we have RS485 and 422. If it's possible to have those both connected and one used for DMX and the other one for the mag torque control, I'm not quite sure, but maybe I can have a look here. Give me 2 seconds.
I know that in the past, when running Modbus, you was not able to run it at the same time as you ran mag torque control. But now with this small switchboard, you can set up Modbus for RS422 and mag torque for 485. So it should be the same, I guess, for DMX.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed and been made possible during the years. But let's see here. Now we have mag torque open, the last one of the last versions here. And here you can see at the moment that both are disabled. I'm not quite sure if you can see it because it's quite small, but you can set it up here anyway. So if I say the RS422, I can use that for SSI. That's all I can do at the moment. No, sorry. SSI, Modbus, or DMX512. So if I select this for DMX512 and use the other one for protocol, it allows me to do it. So it might be possible.
Yeah, I think it is. It should be the same as for Modbus, but yeah, I also didn't test this one.
Yeah. It's normally not something we're using very much, so it's not got that high priority for us at the moment. But if you have any questions, just let us know, and we'll of course find out more about it, and we can also test it here.
There's another question here, if it's possible to run the motor in velocity mode and use DMX to control the speed and direction.
No, the DMX is not used as that. It's a positioning, as it is, it's positioning. So if you jog, you don't know where the motor is anymore. It's just moved away.
Okay, so it's not possible to put it into velocity mode.
Nope.
I hope that answered the question. Otherwise, feel free to write again.
Okay. If there are no more questions, something's coming up.
There's a question whether if there will be any future development.
That depends on the request we get. We know there's still customers using it. So of course, if the potential is there, we can have a look at it and say, okay, we continue doing it. As you can see, we have made the MIS possible to use DMX. So development is done all the time. So it's a question of demands from you if you want it or not.
This is one of the I would say key features of using JVL. It is that we are very good at adapting to requests. But I think we will look into it and see if it's possible to somehow run velocity control. That will depend on further test and development.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I just want you to remember, contact us if you have any requests or some applications where you want to see if it can be used or something else. Of course, you're always ready. You can always contact us on support. We'll try to help you out.
There's a few requests for speed control and output control via DMX. So I think we will be back to you directly via email later, and we will see what's possible.
We'll collect all the questions and find some answers from it, so you get a more precise information about it. We can add it to this as well, so you can go to our homepage and download the information.
Yes.
Okay. I hope you could see the possibilities in it, and maybe you have some customers that need some of these functionalities. Otherwise, yes, we have a lot of other products maybe can be used, Ethernet and all that kind of thing. But if you have any questions, just write to us and we'll see if we can answer it or if we can find the answers for you. So thank you for today, and thank you for participating.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye.